Dave here. I'm going to do a quick pruning on my Cassarinas here. I've already weeded the pots. What I do this time of year, late spring, early summer, I go through all my trees and I give them all a cut back, prune them back, uh, sometimes pretty harshly, depending on what it needs. I defoliate certain trees that tend to get overly large leaves and are very vigorous growers. Um, I weed my pots. I check the wire if anything needs to be removed, get it growing in on the trees. And it's just this time of year, it's a general maintenance going through all the trees. It's a lot of work. I've been spending this past week going through them all. I have these two Cassarinas I'll quick trim, and then I'm going to take you on a walkthrough of all my trees, and you can kind of see where they're at now after I've cleaned them up and pruned them. Um, and then I figure after this video, in about a week or so, I'll put out another video. I want to do a video on veneer and cleft grafting on trees. I think a lot of you would be interested in that. I was at the Bonsai Societies of Florida convention a few weeks back, and Mike Lane did a demonstration workshop discussing and showing how he does it, the veneer and cleft grafts. I think he did, I think it was a sea hibiscus he did it on, but he can do it on a lot of trees. So I'm looking forward to making that video for you. So I'm going to go ahead and just trim these Cassarinas up quick. And kind of see what I've been doing the past week to all my trees. Cassarinas aren't, they're Australian pines, the other name for them. They're not a true pine. So you can just, they bud back very well. You can cut them back pretty hard if you need to. People often will trim these and actually grow them. They'll look almost like a black pine. But I've seen them in every which style. They can be beautiful trees. Not too many limitations in terms of how to style them. into it, that'll bud back. I had wire on this at one time, so the basic structure was set a while back. That's that tree. Check the camera quick. Front will be somewhere in there. That's that tree. Tomorrow I'll go out and make the walkthrough of the yard, and I'll add that to this post. Cassarinas are a great material to work on. Very expressive trees. Alright, here's the walkthrough of my trees. This is a Sagittaria that I recently had displayed at the convention a few weeks ago. There's a willow leaf ficus, grew from cuttings over rocks. I just cut that back hard. That's a kumquat that in the future I see it as a literati, but it doesn't look like much right now. Here's my Brazilian rain tree, looking pretty good. If you notice on the tips, I leave a little bit, because if you cut flush, you get dieback with the Brazilian rain tree. So it's good when you prune to leave a little bit of extra branching, and then you can remove that later. This is a Confederate jasmine that I used to have growing on the fence, and I've style it is meant to be a literati, even though I've discovered it's better to let it grow a little long and then have long, hanging white, beautifully scented flowers on it. And it's really beautiful. Some of my junipers. This juniper I had last year's convention, was part of a display. I have a dwarf bougainvillea back there, pixie. One of my azaleas. My Cassarinas, which you saw already in the video. This is a spruce pine grouping, or forest, depending what you want to call it. Starting to look a lot better. Another one of my junipers. This stick keeps hanging down. I'll have to repot that, even at more of an angle again in the winter. Keep it from leaning forward too far. Texas ebony. Looks like it's gonna flower. So that's nice. Another one of my junipers on a rock. A literati forest of junipers. One in the back there. Okay. Black pine. Another juniper, cascade. Little brush cherry rooted from a cutting. Dwarf jade on a rock. Looks like it's really taking a hold of the rock, so that's good. Another black pine. These were from seed. Junipers. This juniper was a contest I was in some years ago. Starting to get interesting looking. I'll probably make a video in the winter showing all my junipers by themselves. Here's a literati juniper in the back there. My ilex shillings. This is a cephalotaxis. and it's a good option for people who like the Taxus species but live zone 9 and 10, because it's very similar to the Taxus up north, but it can tolerate more heat, and it buds back regularly. I bought there's a cheap plant at Lowe's, cut it back, it budded back very much all over, and now I've got a nice design going. Another dwarf jade, cascade style, Harlandii boxwood. There's a little ilex shillings in the back there, little juniper. Again, my Cassarinas. This back here is a Duranta. It was fallen over in a nursery, dying, forgotten in the back of a nursery, and bought it for $5 and turned that into a bonsai. Alright, so that's this table. Let me go over here. Little Chinese elm, tiger bark ficus. Actually, my oldest tree. That's from when I started bonsai like 35 years ago. That was a cutting that survived. I killed the original tree, and then a cutting from that cutting. So that's the first oldest. What you'll see later, I'll show you my willow leaf ficus forest that I had in the bonsai display at the convention this year. That's my second oldest. This is a hawthorn. That's a Japanese quince. There's a dwarf crepe myrtle. You can see the structure of that through the weeds I have grown on the bench. These are just some cuttings that I've been growing. Some of these are club seedlings that I keep pruned back and potted, and root some little cuttings off of them. That's that's a type of elm, winged bark elm. My Florida red maples, which I defoliated. This tree the main part of it is an air layer off of this tree, and then this second part of that trunk is actually a cutting from that tree. So you can see the Florida red maples. They get beautiful red fall colors. Another Chinese elm. There's a large crepe myrtle that I defoliated. This is that azalea you've seen in my previous post, starting to look good. You saw this in previous post too. Showed you that. That's a Carissa natal plum. Here's a Ficus retusa. I think they change the names on these things. Sometimes they'll change the name. This is a hornbeam I defoliated, and that can be the front, but I've really designed it for the other side to be front. So I'll walk behind the bench and show you that. Little hornbeam. That ficus in the back was in a few years back, was in a convention show. There's a bottle brush right there. That's in the back there. That's Zelkova literati style. See if I can get around here to show you what I was viewing as the front. That's the front I was going for. There's a Another exposed root style crepe myrtle. Another hornbeam. That's a sumo style willow leaf ficus. Juniper. Another crepe myrtle, which I just defoliated last night. It gets nice pink flowers. There's a, I believe that's a sweet gum or black gum. I'm not sure which. I had collected that a number of years ago. Here's a hackberry. There's my Turk's cap, which gets full of red flowers because I pruned it hard. You're not going to see any of that, but it looks good when it develops pads and loaded with red flowers. There's another dwarf variety of crepe myrtle. Crepe myrtles are awesome because there's extreme dwarf varieties. You got every size imaginable leaf on them, different varieties. There's another crepe myrtle. This one tends to get the darker leaves. This is my red bud, which, you know, should probably find a shadier spot for it. It likes shade. It's a little too bright here for it. Some pomegranates, which actually were all part of one tree at one part that rotted, a stump that was cut back and made separate trees. There's a pomegranate on a rock. Here's a dwarf podocarpus, another, they call them yews down here, but it's a different variety. It's tropical pan or subtropical. So that's the Pringles variety. It's a dwarf podocarpus. This is my cassia that I grew from my larger tree in my yard as an air layer. Defoliated this forest here. That was a Freeman maple forest. Let's see if you can make sure you can see it good enough. So yeah, and that you're able to reduce the leaves really small. Here's a ficus too little. Now this is a brush cherry here. I pruned it back hard. Tends to heal over cuts well. And this is probably what I'll use in the video to show the veneer and cleft grafting that I'm going to do. Because I have a big brush cherry tree in my yard that I could pick little branches off of and put where, so I could put branches wherever I want on this tree and design the tree almost from scratch. Another pomegranate, dwarf azalea. It gets little tiny red flowers also in the winter. Here's a common boxwood. You can see my blueberry plants from the back. I'll show you the other side of them. This is a pink flowering Indian hawthorn, doing as a cascade. There's a schlephera. Just cheap plant, you know, 12 bucks, 11 bucks at a nursery. Cut it back. Ginkgo. A friend gave me a sapling. Here's the blueberry. This blueberry has been dying back some, so I cut it back, a bunch of the dead stuff, and just treated it recently with some insecticide and fungicide. So hopefully that comes back. If not, the other tree seems to stay vigorous. This is a blueberry plants that I got from a blueberry you pick nursery that got rid of some of its plants. This is a collected native blueberry, and this thing is always vigorous and does really well. Now this is the willow leaf ficus forest. This is my second oldest tree, and I had that from a little small clump I bought at Chase Rosade Bonsai Studio in New Hope, Pennsylvania, you know, 25, 30 years ago, whatever. Alright, that's the main yard. I'm going to walk through my greenhouse to the back. I have a few things left to show you there. Actually, here's a bald cypress forest I'm working on. You can see that there. some of these things, there's an auction in August, a local bonsai club, and some of my bigger things I'm probably going to get rid of. This is it's like I just weeded this stuff. I already got weeds growing in it again. A stump that I cut back, letting the top grow to heal over the big cut. I don't know if I'll leave that grow in the yard or I might eventually bonsai that. That's a wisteria. Sagittaria thesans, or also called the Chinese sweet plum. These are cuttings that I rooted a couple years ago, and I cut that all back. Like at this time of year, I go through everything. Raspberry. These are hackberry groupings, where I put a bunch of saplings together, strapped them together. I'm going to fuse them, and the base of each sapling will become like a root or part of the nabari. I've got another tray of that over here. Same thing. This is a little Chinese quince cutting I took that rooted. Some Chinese elm and a Japanese quince. Willow leaf ficus cuttings under that soil that the bases are actually kind of thick. Fukian tea, cascade style. This is that, you saw this tree when I was doing the Phoenix graft video. This is a trident maple exposed root, and you can see I did a thread graft here. So I'm waiting till this side becomes thicker than that side before I cut this away. And then I plan next year to air layer this right here and make that its own little tree. Some are citrus trees in the back, some cuttings. There's a water jasmine from a cutting, Virginia creeper. There's also a Freeman maple, exposed root. This I might do some veneer grafting on to get branches where I want, either that or let that lower branch grow and then air layer the top of that and grow it from there. I like to work on taper, really get the taper nice. So that might be what I do with that. Air layer the top, maybe veneer graft. Put a little branch down here for the first branch. Another water jasmine. And I think that's my whole collection. All right.